What happens if one of the most respected men in America decides he is done letting loud men rewrite what real patriotism looks like? The CNN studio was already pulsing with a tension that made the air feel too thin. Not chaotic, not wild, just that sharp kind of quiet that fills a room when everyone knows they came for a civil conversation, but might get something closer to a reckoning. Denzel Washington sat in his seat, posture straight, eyes steady, the calm in his face belying the coil in his voice that people had learned never to mistake for weakness. He had agreed to join this panel to talk about division, loyalty, what America owed the people who still believed in it. But he had known exactly who else would be there. Bill Maher leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, smirk wide, voice ready to test every line Denzel drew. The host welcomed the audience, words as warm as the lights overhead. They called Denzel a living icon. They called Bill Maher the comic who never holds back. And when the first question finally rolled out, Denzel listened without flinching. It was Bill who made the first swing sound like a joke. You know what I love, Denzel? Guys like you talk about unity like it's a bumper sticker. But real patriots don't need pep talks. They fight for what they believe in, no matter who it offends. A few people laughed, polite, awkward, but it landed sour. Denzel's mouth twitched into something that was not a smile. He turned his eyes on Bill, not heated, not loud, just steady enough for the entire table to know this would not be another soundbite they could bury by the next commercial break. And in that heavy silence, Denzel Washington decided he was not about to let a smug man sell false patriotism without learning what the word really meant. Bill Maher shifted in his chair, his grin twitching at the corners like it could not decide whether to stay wide or slip away. He drummed his fingers once on the table, playing to the tiny pocket of the audience that still thought his sarcasm was clever enough to outshine the truth. Denzel Washington did not move. He let Bill's words hang there, the cheap crack dressed up as bravery, and let the studio feel how thin they sounded when no one rushed to laugh them off. The host tried to smooth it over, voice bright but brittle. Bill, I think what Denzel's saying is we need to find what still holds us together, right? Common ground. Bill did not take the out. He leaned in instead, eyes flicking from the host to Denzel, like he wanted the cameras to catch every glint of his grin. Common ground is for people who can't stand on principle. The rest of us, the real patriots, we don't need to hold hands and sing songs. We say it like it is. The word patriots cracked something open that no one could shut again. Denzel's fingers tapped once on the table, not angry, just measured, like a man testing whether the floor under him was steady enough to speak his mind. When he looked at Bill, his voice came out so calm that it cut sharper than anything Maher had said all night. You talk about real patriots, Bill? Denzel said. Tell me where you were when they needed you. Tell me who you've stood up for when it didn't make you money. Patriotism isn't your sarcasm on HBO. Patriotism is sacrifice. It's staying quiet when you want to run your mouth, because your neighbor needs your strength more than your jokes. A hush rolled through the studio. A few heads turned from Denzel to Bill, waiting for the next shot. But Bill's smirk slipped, the corner of his mouth ticking like a man trying to find the punchline that had just walked out the door. The host tried to steer it back with a weak laugh. Okay, let's not get too heavy. Denzel did not break eye contact with Bill. Oh, it's heavy. It's always heavy when you have to stand up for something real. And the silence that settled then did not belong to the stage. It belonged to every person in that room who knew Denzel Washington had just shown them what it looked like when a man refused to perform outrage and gave them truth instead. Bill Maher's fingers stilled on the table. For a heartbeat, the room felt lopsided. The way a stage feels when the script slips out of reach and the audience leans in, waiting to see who will crack first. Bill's eyes darted to the host, to the other panelists, back to Denzel Washington's steady gaze. But Denzel was not blinking. A younger panelist, a commentator brought in to add balance, tried to rescue the moment with a nervous laugh. Look, I think what Bill's saying is that free speech is patriotic too, right? He's allowed to challenge you, Denzel. That's what makes America, America. Bill snapped his grin back in place. Exactly. I don't stand in line and salute when someone tells me what patriotism is. I question everything. That's what I do. I'm the guy with the flashlight when everyone else is stumbling in the dark. Denzel tilted his head. For a second, it almost looked like he might laugh. But the smile never came. He folded his hands on the table, shoulders squared, voice dropping just enough to make the silence thicken in every corner of the studio. You're not holding a flashlight, Bill, Denzel said. You're holding a torch you wave around to keep your audience angry enough to come back next week. That's not light. That's heat. And you don't get to sell that as courage. Bill's grin twitched, but did not disappear. Oh, come on. You think you're the only honest man in the room? You think standing here and giving me a lecture makes you the patriot and me the fraud? Denzel's eyes narrowed, not unkind but unyielding. Patriotism means you carry the burden so someone else doesn't have to. It means you show up for people who don't look like you, don't vote like you, don't laugh at your jokes, and you stand with them anyway. The audience shifted in their seats, not fidgeting, not bored, just locked in, the way people look when they realize they're not watching another clever exchange, but a moment they will replay long after the credits roll. Bill tried to interrupt, but Denzel cut him off with a quiet line that landed like a hammer. You keep your flashlight, Bill. I'd rather stand with the people who light a candle and stay when the room gets dark. And for a moment, Bill Maher had nothing clever left to say. The studio lights felt hotter now, pressing down on every word that hung between them. Bill Maher's grin flickered at the edges, but he forced it back into place like a man who refused to lose a game he thought he had invented. The host tried to cut in, voice too bright to hide the worry underneath. Okay, let's all take a breath. Denzel, you've made your point. Bill's made his. We're all here because we care about the same country, right? Denzel did not look away from Bill. Do you? He asked, his tone so soft the mics almost missed it. Do you care about the same country? Or do you care about the country that keeps paying you to divide people? Bill barked a laugh that did not reach his eyes. Divide people? You think I'm the reason people hate each other now? I'm a comic. I make fun of everyone. Denzel's shoulders dropped half an inch, the only hint of the weight he had just decided to let off his chest. You're a comic, sure. But you don't punch up anymore, Bill. You punch at anything that makes you feel small. You punch at faith, at hope, at unity, because those things don't laugh back. They just remind you what you lost. The younger panelist tried to interrupt again, her voice fragile. We're all allowed to disagree. Maybe it's good to have this tension out in the open. But Denzel's eyes never left Bill. It's not tension. It's the truth. You stand on a stage built on outrage and call it honesty. You tell people they're suckers for believing in something bigger than themselves, because you stopped believing a long time ago. A hush rippled through the audience. This was no longer a debate. It felt like a lesson. Bill Maher leaned forward, smirk sharpened like a blade. And what? You're the one who's going to teach me about believing. You're an actor, Denzel. You stand where they tell you to stand, say what they tell you to say, and walk off when they yell cut. Denzel did not flinch. His answer came so quiet it cracked the air open. And you're the one who never learned when to sit down. The audience did not clap. They just watched the look in Bill Maher's eyes, the way he searched for a joke sharp enough to claw back his ground and found nothing waiting for him there. Bill Maher's jaw twitched like he was chewing on a comeback that would not come out clean. His grin flattened at the edges, turning into the kind of half-smirk a man wears when he wants people to think he is still in control, even when everyone can see he is not. The host's voice floated in, desperate to wrap the moment in something softer. Gentlemen, let's not make this personal. We're all patriots here in our own way, right? Different ideas, same flag. Denzel turned, just slightly, eyes on the host long enough to show respect, then back to Bill, where the weight really belonged. I've got no problem with different ideas, Denzel said. I've got a problem with men who stand on stages, call people suckers for loving something bigger than themselves, and then sell that bitterness like it's the same as courage. Bill laughed, but the sound cracked halfway through. Oh, give me a break, Denzel. You act like you're some soldier. You're an actor. You play heroes. I talk about real life. That's the difference. Denzel's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he might stand, but he stayed rooted, steady, unmoving, a lesson that you do not have to be loud to be unshakable. I've stood in rooms with men who gave everything and asked nothing back. I've prayed with families who put flags in their windows, not because they agreed on every vote, but because they loved the people they stood next to. That's patriotism. That's sacrifice. The audience was silent now, not dead, not bored, just bracing for the next line they knew would land. Bill Maher opened his mouth, but Denzel cut him off, his voice a blade wrapped in velvet. You're no patriot, Bill. You're a salesman. You sell fear wrapped up as honesty. You sell cheap shots dressed up as truth. And when people call you on it, you call it comedy. The last word dropped, so heavy the stage might as well have tilted under it. Bill's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. He drummed his fingers again, but the rhythm was gone. The laughter he counted on had dried up in the rows behind the cameras. Denzel leaned back just enough to reclaim his space, hands folded. The fight finished before Bill could even reload. You want the last laugh? Keep it. But don't ever sell it to these people as patriotism. They deserve better. And in that frozen silence, everyone knew Bill Maher would have no line strong enough to pull it back. Bill Maher did not stand up. He stayed planted in his chair, fingers drumming the table like a man hoping the next beat might pull him back to the rhythm he had lost. The host forced a laugh, the brittle kind that tries to close a wound that refuses to heal. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it. Spirited debate, right? That's what makes this country great. Denzel Washington did not look at the host. He looked at the people beyond the cameras, the ones who had come expecting a performance but found something real instead. His voice dropped low enough that it pulled the quiet in around him like armor. Debate is good. Division for profit is not. And we all know the difference. A few scattered claps echoed through the studio. Not wild, not forced, just real enough to cut through the sticky silence Bill Maher could not fill with a single grin. The show wrapped. The credits rolled. Bill tried to close it with one last smirk. Well, at least we know who's writing the next war movie. But the laugh landed hollow. The moment had already slipped from his grip. By midnight, the clip was everywhere. Headlines called it a clash, a meltdown, an ambush. But the raw footage said otherwise. It showed a man too calm to be baited and too rooted to be rattled. A man who spoke about sacrifice like it was something you live, not something you mock between cheap jokes. The next night, Bill Maher leaned into the spin. He told his audience he had no regrets about poking the bear. He said real conversation was never comfortable. He said Denzel should stick to the script next time. But in comment sections and quiet break rooms and living rooms where the clip looped again and again, people held on to the line that Bill could not spin away. You're no patriot. You're a salesman. They deserve better. Denzel Washington did not post a victory lap. He did not sit for another interview to explain himself. He let the moment breathe on its own, steady, unedited, impossible to twist back into a headline that suited someone else's story. For the people who watched, that line stayed. A reminder that calm is not weakness, that sacrifice is not sarcasm, and that sometimes the strongest man in the room is the one who refuses to sell his truth for the sake of someone else's punchline. Denzel did not stand up to walk away. He stayed right where he was, and when the cameras cut, it was Bill Maher who looked smaller for never knowing when to stand up at all.